Okay, I'll leave it up to Adam and Kaylee.
Terrific. Thank you so much. We appreciate the opportunity to be here today and to speak and introduce some new resources that Kaylee and myself and Canadian Virtual Hospice have been working on. I guess maybe we'll start with some brief introductions. So while I'm speaking, my name is Adam Rappaport, and I am the medical director of the pediatric advanced care team at Sick Kids Hospital, as well as the medical director of Emily's House in Toronto. Unfortunately, my parent co-lead on the website that we're going to be presenting today, Carla Garrett, was unable to join us last minute. So she sends her regrets, and I'm going to do my best to fill in for her and tell you a little bit about Carla's story and why this work has been so important to her. And Kaylee, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Kaylee Eaton Russell. I'm a child life specialist. I started at Sick Kids working in child life, and then moved to the Dr. J Children's Grief Center in supporting families and doing research there. I work now as a lecturer in the child life and pediatric psychosocial care program at McMaster University, and I'm so excited for the work I've been able to do with Canadian Virtual Hospice as well.
Terrific. Okay, well, let's dive right into it. I think I have control. Yeah, there we go. So maybe just to start, I'm guessing that Canadian Virtual Hospice may be a site that not everybody is familiar with. It's actually been called the most comprehensive online resource in the world on living with advanced illness, palliative care, and grief. And that's not, it wasn't called that by Canadian Virtual Hospice. This was actually published in a study before. And you can see there listed a number of the sort of branching websites that they've created, both in English and French. So there's some really great resources, both for people living with serious illness, caregivers, family members, as well as clinicians like Kaylee and myself and others who provide care for patients. But today's focus is going to be on two newer resources put forward by Canadian Virtual Hospice. The first one that I'm going to speak about is a new website that launched a number of months ago called CaringTogether.life, and that's the actual website itself. This is a website that was developed by families as well as some pediatric healthcare providers, really to educate, support, and empower, most importantly, empower parents caring for a seriously ill child. It's a disease agnostic website. There are parents who speak and whose voice comes out through the website who have kids with a variety of illnesses at a variety of stages. And really, I think much of it speaks to just about anybody who is dealing with or has a child with any kind of serious illness. Then I'm going to hand things over to Kaylee. Kaylee's going to tell you a little bit about work that she's been leading, which is really terrific, and actually will soon be hosted on CaringTogether.life as well as other places on the Canadian Virtual Hospice Suite. This is an interactive activity book, or actually books rather, for school-age children living with serious illness. And it's really all about supporting communication regarding their understanding, feelings, questions, and concerns. And Kaylee's going to walk you through some of those just as soon as I'm done my part. So back to the web space itself, when we decided to do this, these were our goals. First and foremost, we wanted to provide an online site or space that would really meet the unique needs of families caring for seriously ill or dying children. I'm going to tell you a little bit in a second about some of the surveys that we did and scanning on the web. We really found that there was nothing that quite did this the way that we wanted to, and that really brought a Canadian or national flavor to it. There are some good sites out there in the US, in the UK, but they feel distinctly American, distinctly British. And we heard from Canadian families that they didn't always speak to them as well. We wanted to provide text-based, video, interactive content, and we needed to do it in both official languages. And that was our goal when we set out to do this. And I'm going to tell you a little bit how we achieved it. And then I will just give you bit of a taste of the content, but really, if I have one message, I hope, I whet your appetites and encourage you to go check out CaringTogether.life more fully after this at some point. So to begin, we thought this was a good idea, we being Canadian Virtual Hospice, but we wanted to make sure that we were on the right track. And actually, we sent out a wide needs assessment survey to parents that we were connected with and through various pediatric palliative care programs across the nation to ask them a few questions to make sure that we were on target on this. The first question we asked were you able to find all the information you were looking for about serious illness in children online? And 124 parents from across the country answered this question. And here's what we found. You can see the numbers there. I want to draw your attention to no. About 70%, just under 70% said they were not able to find it. More importantly, we didn't ask this question, but I think the number would be quite higher. How long did it take you to find, right? Maybe 30% or 25% rather were able to find what they were looking for, but it might have taken, a lot of searching. We then asked, how helpful do you find the information that is currently available online about serious illness in children? And here we had 144 respondents. And what I want you to want to highlight to you here is on the Likert scale, we're on the lower end. Generally speaking, they did not find the information online very helpful for their situation. And lastly, we asked, how likely would you be to access a web space where you could get support for your questions from others? And we described in more detail about what we meant with that question, really looking to get support from other parents, hearing the voice from other parents who had similar experiences, as well as trained healthcare providers. And you can see that, the vast majority were in favor of something like this. So with that in mind, we started off on this project after receiving funding from Health Canada and had our first meeting in February 2019, excuse me. The work that, really was put into the website was done by 40 different families from across the country who contributed in various ways, some of them writing some of the content, making suggestions, reviewing, and a number of them being videotaped by our videographer, and they have their videos all over the site. We also had 25 pediatric palliative care specialists from various disciplines, so physicians, nurses, social workers, play specialists, child life specialists like Kaylee, grief and bereavement specialists, who really informed all the content on the site. And finally, you can see that we had a lot of partnership, and I'm really thrilled about this. This site is highly endorsed by all the children's hospitals, as well as pediatric hospices across Canada. The information that you'll find on CaringTogether.life is sort of set up in 6 different buckets, and I've put them here for you to see. They're sometimes a little bit arbitrary, but we wanted to give people a sense as to where they could go to find what they're looking for. There's a few things that are actually found in multiple places because sometimes it's not all that intuitive where you would go. But these are the major headings of the site, and I'll give you a small taste of what you can find in 2 of them. So here's the one on your child. And you can just take a look here at some of the topics that are listed there. We do talk a little bit about information when there's an unborn child with a serious illness. This is something that Canadian Virtual Hospice is interested in supporting families who find themselves in this situation. Understanding and coping with various serious conditions, including cancer, of course, children living with serious illness, understanding prognosis. Living with uncertainty was a big thing that we heard from parents that they wanted this site to address. How to incorporate improving quality of life and managing symptoms, and then of course communication to your child or your child's siblings. Here's another example: your family. I'm not going to talk about this. You can read it yourself, but I will take a moment here just to point out the artwork that you can see. This artwork is something very special to me. This artwork was done by the Emily of Emily's House, which I'm the medical director of in Toronto. Emily was a young woman who was diagnosed with an incurable metabolic condition that was progressive. So she suffered significant neurodegeneration over the second part of her life. And she was someone that I had the distinct honor of getting to know well over that period and becoming friends with. Emily, in her last 3 years, actually took up painting. This was at a point in her life where she couldn't speak. She was completely dependent on a feeding tube and had very little ability to move, but was able, in fact, with assistance, to make remarkable artwork. And there's more about Emily on the site as well. So that gives you a sense of how it's divided up. But really, I think the best way to get a sense of what kind of stuff you can expect on the site is by sharing some of the content. And again, I encourage you to go on the site and explore yourself. That's really the best way to see a new website. But I will share a little bit of information. Here's what I like to call the trailer of the website. This can be found on the landing page.
Going through this, you feel very alone. I feel like connecting with families, even seeing families in a setting that are going through what you're going through helps a lot.
When Canadian Virtual Hospice approached me with the idea of creating a web space really designed by families for other families, really sort of guiding them and giving some direction when you have a child with a serious or life-threatening condition, I thought this was a terrific idea.
Caring for your ill or dying child is probably the most difficult challenge you will ever face. A child's illness affects each family member and every aspect of their lives. CaringTogether.life was created by families like you and healthcare providers who specialize in caring for seriously ill children. You know your child best. This web space offers information, strategies, and resources to help you make decisions about treatment. Provide the best care for your child. Understand the impacts of illness and find supports. Connect with your school and community. Cope with life after the death, including practical matters and honoring your child. This Canadian resource also includes the personal stories of families who cared or are caring for seriously ill children. They share insights, strategies, challenges, and moments of joy in candid videos. We hope this web space will help you, your family, and your healthcare team to care together.
There we go. Kaylee and I will take questions at the end, but I will not accept any questions about that terrible mustache. I can't look at that without cracking a smile. So this would normally be where we hand it off to Carla, who I mentioned is not able to be here. Carla is the parent co-lead on creating this website. And I love hearing Carla speak about why she got involved in this and why she feels that having that family voice is so important. This would be the point where Carla introduces you to this gorgeous little boy on this slide. This is her son, Xavier, who is diagnosed at 8 months with an incurable brain tumor. And Carla actually writes quite a bit on the site herself. She runs an active blog on the site too. But on the landing page, she introduces Xavier and a little bit about why she wishes something like this existed when her son was diagnosed with cancer and going through the treatment. First of all, Carla said that this would help her feel not so alone. And obviously, I know that I'm speaking to a group today in OPAC that really understands the value of peer support and parents coming together. Carla understands that too, and she would tell you that she gained great benefit connecting with other parents. But there were times that she felt that, having that connection directly in real time was not what she needed. That sometimes doing things asynchronously and doing things through, connecting with parents, if you will, through a website indirectly could be really helpful. Carla had a lot of questions about palliative care. She tells us on the site that right off the bat, she was told that her son's condition was palliative, and that terrified her. She immediately had thoughts about what that meant and what it didn't mean as far as Xavier's care went. Looking online originally did not help her. She wasn't able to find the information that she was looking for. And finally, she had questions. She had moments, she would tell you, that where her mind wandered off, sometimes into dark places. And she wasn't sure who she could ask about these things. She was embarrassed to ask these questions about to other parents who maybe weren't thinking about these things. Things like, what if they can't prolong Xavier's life? What is his death going to look like? How am I going to get through this? She didn't know if this was fair game to ask the parents that she was connecting with, or even the healthcare providers at her hospital where her son was taken care of. And she really liked the idea of being able to go online and learning directly from other parents who maybe had similar questions and had some answers to share. One of the things that Carla loves so much about the site, and I do too, is that there are over 400 videos all throughout the site, and they all talk about a range of subjects, and they're all very well organized. There's quotes throughout, there's vignettes. So whether you're someone that likes to read, delve deep into reading and thinking about things, or watch a short video, there's something for you. Again, one of the things that was important to me as the medical lead on this site was to make sure that parents going to this site, even clinicians, mind you, left with a better understanding of what palliative care is. It is no secret that to most, palliative care is synonymous with death and dying. Well, that is not the case in pediatrics. And that was really something that we wanted people to understand. Obviously, end-of-life care is a part of what we do, but it is not the bulk of what we do. And in fact, she wouldn't have included this video, but because Carla is not here, I'm going to let Carla tell you herself about palliative care.
When we discussed palliative care, our understanding was different initially. We didn't really understand what it was. To us, it meant that he was actively dying. And so when doctors would talk to us about it, we kind of pushed them away and shrugged them off because we didn't want to believe that we were in that state. And it actually took another mother that I knew to really help me understand what palliative care was. And she had already been through it and explained how it's not necessarily because they're at end of life, it's to give them the best life for as long as they have. And that there were so many supports that we could get by accepting palliative care that we just didn't know existed because we didn't want to talk about it because of our misunderstanding of what it actually was. So it wasn't until after I had talked to this, peer that I understood, and we did accept palliative care, and it was like having a warm blanket wrapped around us, really. There were so many things we didn't know we could have help with. And it really did make it so much better in the end for us, having all that extra support.
The other thing that Carla mentioned and talks about often around the site was, she did have a lot of questions because she was told right off the bat that Xavier's brain tumor was not ultimately curable. She didn't know who to go to with these questions, and she thought it was taboo to ask. And I have to tell you, in my line of work, I find that to be true of a lot of parents, even those who have children who are ultimately going to be cured of their cancer or other condition. As soon as you find out that your child has a serious illness, it's human nature to sometimes go to dark places and worry about the what ifs and the worst case scenarios. But again, you don't always know who you can talk about those things with. Carla often tells me being able to go to a website where she could search these things up and know that she's not alone and that other parents are thinking the same things, and getting accurate answers is really helpful. I'll show you one more video regarding that before I hand it over to Kaylee. Whoops. Sorry, let's try that again.
Towards the latter part, I think emotionally, mentally, number one, he was tired. He admitted that he was tired. And so on the night that he passed, I remember my husband, that particular night we had a lot of visitors. Both rooms were filled with visitors. And my husband was standing next to his bed. And we could see by his breathing that it was soon. And my husband rubbed his head and said, "Keon, it's okay, baby. You can let go. We are going to be fine. We're going to be fine. You can let go, baby." He nodded his head. And shortly after, he took his last breath. Because I think he wanted to make sure that we were going to be okay. And for the last 2 days of his life, he separated himself from me because he felt like I wouldn't be able to handle it. And so he separated from me. So in the end, there was relief for me that he's no longer suffering, because I don't want him to suffer in a selfish way.
Kaylee?
I am not prepared for all of that. Goodness, what a wonderful human. Okay. So, Me and My Illness is an interactive activity book that we created because we know that knowing what to say, knowing how to start a conversation, knowing how to navigate conversations with children about their illness, their feelings, their worries, that's really hard. So, or that can be really hard. And just as Adam just said, it's so natural, no matter what a person's prognosis, that as soon as there is a diagnosis of anything, it's very natural that our reflex is to worry worst case scenario, all those what ifs. But we also know that it's so hard to ask those questions out loud. And so this tool is meant to support, to be an interactive, engaging, interesting way to help children and their parents or caregivers or clinicians to have those conversations. It's not meant to replace those dialogues at all. It's just meant to kind of bolster those conversations. Our target age range, we were kind of aiming for 7 to 12, heavy on the ish, because, you know, that's such a big range, and they're 7 years old can be such a wide range, and so can 12. So it's really meant to be usable as widely as possible. There are ways to adapt parts of the activity book for kids as young as 4. And if kids don't mind pretending that they're not too cool for it, then over 12 as well. So the content of the book was reviewed by clinicians as well as parents, including Carla, and some children in our target age range as well. So I'm going to give you a kind of guided tour, I just keep clicking my computer as if I can control the slides. Adam, do you mind clicking, please? Thanks. Thank you. So this is our table of contents, and you can see how the illustrations are meant to be kind of lighthearted. So our squiggly path, and you're really meant to be able to jump ahead and back. And it's not meant to be a sit down and go page 1, 2, 3 through to the end all in one sitting. It's meant to be more like a choose your own adventure, go through whatever sections feel relevant and meaningful in the moment. But it starts with an about me in a way that so many, what kids might think of as like a normal activity book would. And then all these other sections, making sense of changes, my body and mind, my feelings, talking about illness. We built in a little bit of a decision-making toolkit, answered the most common kinds of questions about having an illness. And then we talked about what happens when someone dies. It's not at all framed as if this is a book for a child who is dying. It's framed in that way of anytime anybody has a diagnosis, that's our reflexes to worry about stuff like that, even if it's totally unlikely. So that section is really carefully worded that way. And then the last sections are my community and me, and then all of the resources and a downloadable version of this. So this will be both an interactive activity book where you can drag and drop and click and stuff, or you can download it and print it off as a hard copy. Click. Thanks. So I just wanted to give a couple of examples of how the book looks. So this first section, making sense of changes, you can see the language here. It's really meant to be just as CaringTogether.life, Adam mentioned, as disease agnostic. We really were trying to go for that here as well. So whether a child is born with an illness or diagnosed with an illness. So this is sort of in the let's learn a little bit about you, the child using this activity book. So checking off whether this illness is very new, a little bit new. And we've tried to always build in the I'm not sure or other, so that whether it's because what's right for this child isn't listed in this list or they're not sure about it, we just tried to make it as flexible as we could. Can you click again for me, please? Thanks. So it's strategically worded and organized to encourage the child to reflect on their own situation, to encourage emotional expression about their illness, their grief, everything else. It's worded to validate their experience, to let them know that all of their feelings are natural, and to really foster dialogue so that whoever is helping the child or present with the child, and there's a blurb about the different ways that this book can be used. And for some children, there might be parts or the whole book that they want to do pretty independently, whereas for many families, it'll feel better to be doing it together as much as possible. But either way, that dialogue, in order for really to reflect and process all of the changes that are happening and all of the changes that might continue to happen, and some that can be prepared for a little bit. Click. So the next sections go in specifically into detail about changes in how your body feels or looks, changes in the way that you're thinking or what you're thinking about, changes to the way that you're feeling about any of those things. And lastly, changes to your daily activities, your routines, what you're able to do or what you have to do because of appointments or immunosuppression or those kinds of things. So the next two sections, one is my body and mind, and the next is my feelings. And there's a lot of similarity in the structure of these two sections. We have strategically included activities that are meant to explore for the children to talk about where they feel different sensations in their bodies, different symptoms that they might have, including what parts of their bodies feel more comfortable and when those symptoms, what helps or compounds those symptoms. And then in the emotions chapter, helping children put a name to the different feelings that they're having, really validating the range of feelings, that you can have conflicting feelings at the same time, really just trying to normalize all of that. So I'll show you, I think, one of the body mapping activities so they can help to articulate where they feel different things. Daily patterns in thoughts and feelings and physical sensations, and as well as understanding why and how going through something like this and medical factors can affect what you're thinking, how you're focusing. And then each section has a make a plan page. So what are we going to do with all this? What are some strategies that might be useful? And so we've proposed a huge range of strategies, and they can choose whether any of those seem like a good idea to try, or if they have other ideas. We really wanted to give them a concrete, something that they could turn to and come back to remember what they wanted to try. So this is a body mapping activity. So in the interactive version, you'll be able to drag and drop these different shapes to show where you feel these different sensations in your body. And in the PDF, they can color or draw the little arrow to draw. This goes here, as well as highlighting what feels okay. This one is trying to encourage some thinking about, what do you think you might be thinking about, wondering about? What do you think other people might be thinking about, wondering about? And this is a way to do, if there's something that's too hard to say out loud, maybe you can draw, maybe it can be a symbol. We wanted to make sure that there are lots of different opportunities for people to use. Lots of people are not super comfortable expressing with words, and children especially may not have the words. So we wanted to include a lot of expressive nonverbal strategies as well. I love this so much. This is the child lifer in me. So we wanted to include as many feelings as we possibly could to help normalize that every single one of these feelings is totally normal and natural and okay. Even if they're uncomfortable, they're totally okay to have. So we've tried to build in different ways that children can use these activities to show people in their lives how they're feeling. And also for families, this is one of the ones where it's such a beautiful opportunity for families to start to share together how they're feeling, because we know that two people in the same family, we know that every person in the same family might have different feelings about the same thing. They're all valid feelings. We know that even if everybody in the family had the same feeling, they might all show it a different way. They might all need a different kind of supportive response. So we really wanted to make these activities be an opportunity to help kids and the grown-ups in their lives talk about these things and strategize together. So there's also a page that describes what each of those feelings is. So there's a piece of emotional literacy in there as well. And then this is an example of the make a plan pages. So if you're working through hard emotions, what can you do that might help? And we really wanted to validate that you don't have to want to take deep breaths. My daughter, if I tell her one more time that we should take a deep breath, I think she's not going to take a deep breath. We'll just say that. So that's okay. That might not be the thing that works for you. So to be able to drag and drop in the yes, that I've tried it, maybe I will try it, no, absolutely no way, please don't ask me again. and I don't know categories. And this is, again, it'll be drag and drop online, but you can do the tracing or the crossing out and circling however you like. So it's really meant to be modifiable. I'll just say also, in terms of the adaptability, that there are some notes in the book as well about if your child is not super wanting to talk about stuff, or if they have communication challenges, how you can use this in a different way so it's not up to them to have to say the words out loud or to be the one to do the drawing or the writing. So it can be really modified for different abilities as well. Thanks. So talking about your illness, we've included some pieces about what can make talking hard, the things that we can worry about that can make it hard to talk about it, and strategies for each of those. Some of them are like thinking strategies, like trying to consider a different alternative. Others are tips, like finding someone who you talked with about something else that was hard before. So trying to really be concrete. So we're validating, but we're also trying to give tools and things to try, and culminating in our make a plan section. So in this communication chapter, the make a plan, a lot of times when we're having a real life conversation with a child, we can talk about whether it's too hard to ask a question because they don't know the words, or they haven't actually formulated the question, or it feels too scary to say it out loud, or they're afraid that if they say it out loud, it makes it real. One of the tricks we can use in real life is to say, you know what, I'd be happy to tell you some of the questions that other kids have asked, and you can tell me if you want to know how I answered them. And so we wanted to kind of use the same strategy here by sharing, these are some really common questions. Do you want to know any of these questions? So trying to give them, trying to break the seal for them, kind of, and then always with the add your own questions here. The decision-making toolkit, we started off by trying to distinguish between small decisions, like what are you going to eat for breakfast, and big decisions, like about healthcare. So we tried to pull out what are the things that can help you make those big decisions, the things that you know about yourself, the questions that you have about what's happening, what might happen, and also what's important to you when you're finding something out. What do you want us to know about how we should be sharing information with you? So that's all collected in this section. So these are some of the kind of reflective questions to help think about what's important to you, and that can help guide what do you want to know or what do you want to do. So what is it important for me to do? Is there something that I don't want to do? What will the healthcare team do to help me if things get worse? So hopefully we framed it in a way that none of these questions are like worded in a way that like, well, now you better worry about this. They're really framed in, these are some questions that some people wonder about. Maybe you wonder about some of them, maybe you don't. Maybe there are other questions that you wonder about. But we wanted to break the seal so that they weren't the first ones to have to say out loud some of these hard questions. Common questions about having an illness. These are largely come from something called the 6 C's that you can read more about on the CaringTogether.life website. And it's so wonderful. It's kids' most common concerns, which are not necessarily asked out loud. But Adam had the genius idea of making this a true or false quiz. So it's interactive and fun. So they're framed as questions, true or false. For example, most serious illnesses are not contagious, which means your friends and family can't catch the illness from playing, touching, or spending time with you, because so many people worry, so many young people worry when they have cancer that they might have caused it, or that they might spread it to somebody else, especially when they've heard about it spreading inside their own body. So you choose true or false, submit, and then it pops up the answer for you. So other questions are about things like how to connect with the people in your life. So then this section about what happens when someone dies, as I said before, it's really about, you can even see from the first paragraph here, sometimes people die from illnesses and sometimes they don't. It's really not framed as though it's about the child or anybody in their family. It's just that, as this paragraph says, when you or someone in your life has an illness, it's natural to think or wonder about it even more. So we're really trying to normalize and some of these most common questions that clinicians and people who reviewed the book have been asked are really what's collected in here. What does died mean? What does it feel like? And will their family be okay? Thanks. And then that question about will their family be okay is so often tied up with, are they going to be so okay that they move on and forget about me? And so it's so important to build in this piece about how people will be remembered. So we've said, again, this is a common worry, but people who've had a family member die said that they could never, ever forget. And here are some things that families do to honor the person who died and to keep them a part of their life forever after. What ideas do you like of these things? And it's not necessarily geared towards if you died or if somebody died, how would you, what are the ideas that you like? And then my community and me. So this section talks about, like, you know, who do you think of as being in your community? A lot of times children will think about their family as the people who live in their house. But when we start to kind of probe at this conversation, can really broaden it to who are all the people who are important to me in my life. And it's a much bigger circle. And so these frames in the bottom right here are for children to be able to draw pictures of the portraits of all of the people who they miss. And this section also talks about all of the different ways that an illness can impact your relationships, whether it's strengthened or strained or both. And includes a make a plan. What would you like to do with those people if you could? Lastly, we put it at the end because the book is really meant to be for children. We didn't want children to open a book and have it start off with information for adults, because then it really doesn't feel like it's for them. So it's at the end, but it includes all of this totally necessary information about who's the target audience and how the adults can prepare to start and have these conversations with the children in their lives, how to modify content depending on the circumstances, the illness, the child's ability, their attention span, and then supporting children's feelings, recognizing that sometimes when you have a conversation through one of these activities, it might bring up big feelings, but that doesn't mean that you've caused those big feelings. It just means they get to come out, and that can be a huge relief when you're looking back, but it can be really intense in that moment. So trying to think about how to prepare for that and how to support in the midst of that. And then as well, talking about how to navigate that content about dying and death, making sure you're as prepared as you want to be, but also recognizing that you don't have to go through the whole book. You can pick and choose which bits at which times feel right. That's one of the beauties of being able to print it off as a PDF and pull out whatever pages you want and leave the rest for another time pile. And then a huge list of links to amazing additional resources as well. We would love to hear any questions, comments, any dilemmas, anything.
Feedback. The other thing, I think I mentioned this earlier, but I'll say it again. We are really excited. This workbook that Kaylee's been working hard on leading, and I know she would be the first to say that other people did help. This is going to be put up on CaringTogether.life. So it's going to be a resource available there and on other places as well, to make sure that that it's very accessible. So we're very excited to expand the content of CaringTogether.life.
I will also add, sorry, you reminded me, I made you put plural activity books because there's this one for children who are the ones with a serious illness. There's another one called My Life, My Illness, for when a parent, sibling, or any other person close to the child has a serious illness. And then there's a separate one that's kind of like an additional chapter for when the person who's died or dying has made. So that's a little bit distinct, but just to know that in case you're wearing multiple hats here today, there are, or siblings of children who have an illness as well. There's a version for that too.
Great. Thank you so much, Adam and Kaylee, for introducing us to these amazing new resources for families. Very important. I wanted to open up the floor to see if anybody has any questions or comments. If you want to just speak up or type them in the chat, feel free to do so at any time. What I like, Kaylee, I love the little faces too, the faces of emotions, right? Those are really cute. And also, like you said, for emotional literacy, that was really important. So
Thanks.
And Adam, when you mentioned about the what palliative care is and is not, so that was really important to distinguish too. So yeah, great. Any questions? So all these resources are on CaringTogether.life, and CaringTogether.life, it's part of the Canadian Virtual Hospice, right? So like a program of it, right? So these are on CaringTogether.life. You can also check out virtualhospice.ca as well. What is on virtualhospice.ca? Is it more for like adults, or what is on there?
No, as I mentioned at the beginning, Canadian Virtual Hospice is this national organization that really focuses on creating online material, hence the virtual, for Canadians. So it's really Canadian focused and very Canadian appropriate for anyone dealing with serious illness. You know, when they started, given the name, it was very focused on death and dying and very adult focused. But over their years, they've really expanded, and they've reached out to people like Kaylee and myself to include the pediatric perspective. And they recognize, for example, I think, you know, again, we talk a lot about language, and a lot of the work that Kaylee and I have done and others is about demystifying and breaking down misconceptions about certain language, but they do recognize that there's some words like hospice and palliative care not easy to get past. And so they readily said, you know, we'll create the content, but we'll give you a URL like CaringTogether.life, something that, you know, we don't expect a lot of parents of children with cancer to necessarily say, hey, I think I'm going to go check out a hospice site. But we do hope when they Google, they're going to look up things and put keywords in that are going to bring them to sites like CaringTogether.life. And just like the workbook that Kaylee demonstrated, there are difficult topics on CaringTogether.life, and there are more basic topics. And, you know, CaringTogether.life is meant more for parents, relatives, adult relatives who have a child in their life with a serious illness. They can go as deep or as superficial as they want, when they want, and when they're ready. And again, if Carla was here, she would tell you that a lot of that happens, I think happened for her at 2 a.m. when you're trying to go to sleep and you're thinking about these things. And that's when you start, you know, going online and checking things out. And we wanted to make sure that if you're like that person, if you're like Carla, if you're like many other parents, that you actually have somewhere you can go now to get the information you're looking for, to get it delivered accurately, that the information is truthful. And again, that it comes through the Canadian context, that this was put together by all the major Canadian hospitals. And it reflects really what you can expect, whether you're getting care in Alberta, PEI, or somewhere else in the country.
Yeah, it's so important to have the Canadian specific content, and also to have this website, you know, for parents. Like you said, there's so much information out there that when you're surfing the internet at 3 a.m. or whatever, and you want a site that's that's vetted, that's got accurate information, and that speaks to you, like, you know, your experiences, what you're going through, that understands, like other parents, like that powerful video you showed at the end of your presentation, Adam. Yeah, that was really poignant.
Yeah.
So, but really that they understand. And Susan mentioned here in the comments, thank you for the presentation. It really provided so many resources and demystified palliative care for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan.
And are there any questions just before we go? No? Okay.
Can I just throw out, sorry, that when you were talking, Adam, about the words that can be hard to get past, it reminded me that I should have said that when we're talking about grief, we're not just talking about grief because somebody is dying or has died, that it's totally, you know, that we grieve a diagnosis, we grieve loss of abilities, we grieve changes to the way we imagine the future. And so when I talk about a book that's for children who are grieving, I don't mean to limit that to grieving because there's a death somewhere, but really that it's just meant to help with all the feelings that come along with any really hard situation. So thank you, because I will from now on put that up front.
Yeah, it's really important what you mentioned, Kaylee, that there's many different types of grief, and that is true. Grieving your old life, you know, now your new normal, and so many other types of grief. So that's great that there's resources out there, CaringTogether.life. Be sure to check it out. There's so much information on there. I just want to mention briefly as well that OPAC, opacc.org. We're also here to support parents of children with cancer, diagnosed with cancer throughout your whole journey, from diagnosis even through, you know, the death of a child. Unfortunately, we have parents on all that spectrum, survivors, everybody. So we have virtual weekly drop-in sessions with our parent liaisons Tuesdays at 7:30, where you can chat with our parent liaisons about anything, even not just your child's illness, but anything like siblings, school, any concerns you have as a parent. And we wanted to leave it here then. Thank you so much, Adam and Kaylee, for giving us your time tonight, and for all the attendees. And be sure again to check out CaringTogether.life and opac.org. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks.
Good night, everybody.
Night.